The settlement numbers used in my examples are just examples. Every case is different. I'm using numbers to help you understand the process. I'm not talking about your case. And just because I'm discussing settlement numbers doesn't mean that your case will definitely settle. It's unlikely, but possible, that we may recover nothing in your case. Therefore, we highly recommend that you do not think about how you will spend whatever monies you may receive as a result of your case. For example, college tuition, home improvements, vacations, cars, new businesses, etc. Results are not guaranteed in any case. So please, don't spend this money before you get it. Hi everybody, and welcome to the video library of Salenger, Kimmel Bavaro. I'm Jeff Kimmel, managing partner of the firm. In this video, I'll be explaining legal fees and other costs and expenses associated with your case. Now, these numbers are very important because they will directly affect the bottom line, the amount that you take home from any settlement we recover in your case. Now, what's a legal fee? The legal fee is the amount of money that we get paid to prosecute your case. We work on what's called a contingency basis. Most other areas of law don't. And most other areas of law and other lawyers charge by the hour. You go to their office, they do work, they send you a bill, and it's X amount of dollars per hour. That's not how we work. A contingency fee is based on the outcome. We only get paid if we are successful in representing you and we get money for you. What that means is our interests going forward in the case are aligned. We want to get as much money for you, and I'm sure you want to get as much money as possible. So the contingency structure works very well in personal injury cases. Now, mind you, there are no guarantees for you or for us. And if we take a case and for whatever reason there is no recovery, the case gets dismissed, we lose it at trial, then there is no fee for the lawyers. So what is our fee? How much of the settlement do we get? Well, typically it's 1/3. Now let me say here, we handle medical malpractice cases. The fees in medical malpractice cases we will not be discussing in this video. The fees in medical malpractice cases are different. Sometimes they're 1/3. It's sort of complicated, and we've devoted a video entirely to medical malpractice issues, including the fees. So the fees in this video do not apply to medical malpractice cases. So let's talk about non-med mal cases, general personal injury cases. What are the fees and how are they calculated? I'm going to grab a pen and paper and we'll figure it out together. Okay, so let's take a very simple example to start this off. Let's say that your case settles or resolves for $30,000. That's an arbitrary number. I'm just picking it out of thin air, $30,000. How is the legal fee calculated and how much would you get? So let's write it out. Legal fee calculation. Okay. So the simple example, say the case settles for $30,000. That's the settlement. So typically the legal fee is 1/3. In most cases that is the case. So 1/3 of $30,000 is $10,000. And that would be the legal fee. And then what you do is you subtract the legal fee from the settlement. So 30,000 minus 10,000 is $20,000. Okay? And that would be the client, the client's share. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, so let me take a moment here to make a very important point. Do not spend this money, okay? We're having a lot of fun. We're writing down numbers. We're talking about thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. Now, this is not your case that we're talking about. And as I said, there are no guarantees with any case. We're working on a contingency, and we may lose the case and you may get nothing. There are no guarantees in personal injury law. And as much as your case may have looked like a slam dunk case when we started, a case has a life, and things change, and evidence changes, and people get questioned under oath, and testimony comes in. And a case is a very fluid process and a fluid thing that can be affected by many factors. And so my message right now is, do not take for granted that this is your money. Do not spend this money. Do not think about how you're going to spend this money. Don't think that your child's college education is taken care of. Don't put a down payment on a house thinking you're going to have money to pay for that house. Nothing is certain, and we're all in this together. Our fee is contingent on the outcome. We want as much money as you do. We want as much money as possible. So please, don't take these numbers as meaning that's what your case is worth or what it's not, or that your case is even going to settle. I just want to make that point very clear. So let's get back to the calculations. So far, we've had a very simple calculations of the fee, of the settlement, and then the fee. What about disbursements? What are disbursements? Disbursements are expenses that come up during the life of your case. Now, these expenses are paid by us. We pay for whatever is needed to prosecute your case. And those expenses also get reduced from the settlement. These expenses are essentially a loan that we give to you, or that we give to the case, contingent on the case being successful. And then at that point, we get that money back. So we lay out the money and we get it back. What do I mean? What are examples of disbursements and expenses? So typically, everybody, or most people involved in these kinds of cases, have physical injuries for which you receive medical treatment, whether it's at a doctor's office or in a hospital. So we have to get the medical records. Those medical records prove a lot of the case, and they're necessary. They're necessary for us to evaluate the case. They're necessary for the defendants to defend the case. They're necessary for the insurance companies to perhaps settle the case. So one expense that's common to almost every case is obtaining medical records. Now, that can be a big expense if you've had hospitalizations and you've been hospitalized for months at a time, and the record is thousands of pages, it will be thousands of dollars. If we're talking about a few doctor visits and it's a few pages, it'll be much less. But that's one expense common to almost every case. What else? There are court fees, where we pay the court fees to purchase an index number, which is needed to start a lawsuit. There are fees associated with filing certain things in the court, whether they're motions or other types of legal documents. These aren't huge expenses, but they're usually in the hundreds of dollars, and we pay them. What other expenses are there? Well, depositions have a cost. So depositions are where you and other people are questioned under oath, and there's a court reporter who's taking down all the testimony, and it comes out in a booklet. But that costs money. We have to pay for the transcripts that we get from the depositions. So if it's a deposition that's short and it's 50 pages, that's one value. If it's a long deposition that's over several days, it can be hundreds or thousands of dollars. So that's another expense that we would have to cover. What else? Well, many of the cases that we have involve doctors treating our clients for their injuries. So these doctors are important, and oftentimes we'll have to get reports from the doctors. We call them narrative reports or expert reports. And it's not something that doctors typically do when they're treating you. They don't summarize their treatment just because they want to know, what's going on, or they just want to document it. It's something that's specific to a lawsuit. When a lawyer says to the doctor, hey, we're representing this client and we need a summary. We need what we call a narrative, which sums up the type of treatment that you've rendered to the client, the prognosis, all the specifics, about the injury as it relates to our case. It's not something that doctors normally do. So when we get that, we have to pay the doctor, and doctors charge a lot of money. So those reports could be in the thousands of dollars. These experts, these physicians, also may be needed to testify at trial. So if your case goes all the way to trial and we have to prove to a jury your injury and how significant and serious it was and what type of treatment you received, perhaps if you had a surgery, what that surgery entailed, we would need your doctor or some doctor to come in and testify about what that was and what that looked like and how much it cost and what the future looks like for you. For that kind of testimony, doctors charge a lot of money. It's even getting more expensive than ever. Some doctors charge $10,000 just to show up for a half a day in court. And that's not an exaggeration. So one of the big ticket items on the expense list would be for experts. And we have experts in other cases as well, not just medical experts. If there's a labor law case, or if there's a case that involved a trip and a fall over some stairway or some defect, we may need other types of experts like engineers to come in and give us advice and opinions about how the situation was dangerous, how it violated certain laws, and we would need that to help prove our case. So those experts also charge a lot of money. So all these are disbursements, expenses that we front, that we pay, and that we are risking, because if there's no recovery, then there's no recovery. So whatever these expenses are, we lay out the money, and then at the end of the case, we get it back. So let's go back and take out the pen and take out the paper and see exactly how these expenses and these disbursements affect the bottom line. Okay, so now that we know about disbursements, let's go back to our example and now add in what happens when we factor in the disbursements. So we'll do the calculation over and we'll say, okay, $30,000 as the settlement and $10,000 as the legal fee. But now we add in the fact that my firm has spent $1,000 in disbursements. We call them disbursements. It's also referred to as expenses. And we just went over what those disbursements or expenses can be. So we talked about medical records. We talked about court costs. We talked about deposition transcripts, and we talked about expert fees. Those are usually the big ticket item in disbursements. So let's just say, for the sake of this example, all these disbursements totaled $1,000. Obviously, it could be more. And so then the client share would be 30,000 minus 10 minus 1 is 19,000. And that would be your share, client share. Okay, so again, pretty simple. What I want to point out now is that there is another option that clients can choose when you're signing on a retainer for a personal injury case. And I'm going to show you that option, but I will say that so far in my career, I've never seen anyone take this option. It's usually listed in the retainer as option 2. And option 1 is really what I'm describing here. It's exactly what I'm describing here. Option 2 is different, and the reason why nobody that I've seen has chosen this option is because you, the client, have to pay the expenses out of your pockets. So these disbursements that we're talking about here, we pay those. We front that money. It's essentially a loan. We just talked about this. You can choose to not take that loan. You can choose to make those payments, and you will end up with a little more money, and the legal fee will be a little less, but it's a lot of money to outlay most of the time, and people don't choose that option for that reason. So what I want to do is go through a quick example of that so you can see the difference between option 1 and option 2. So let's do it as option 1 is what we just described. And I'm going to use some other numbers, but I'll use other numbers just to make it easier as far as the example. So in option 1, we'll say $30,000 settlement, and we'll say $10,000 is the legal fee, because in option 1, the legal fee is based on what the settlement number is. So again, this is the settlement, and this is the legal fee. It's 1/3. Okay, and the expenses we'll say here are $3,000. $3,000. So that would be $17,000 is what the client share would be. And we'll say disbursements or expenses. Okay? So in option 1, at a $30,000 settlement with $3,000, okay, in disbursements, the client share is $17,000. But if you choose option 2 and you choose to make the payments for the expenses, okay, this is how it's different. $30,000 settlement, okay, but the expenses that you pay, that you cover, are taken off the top, right? So say you paid that $3,000 in expenses, right? Expenses, settlement. Okay, so now that leaves $27,000, and the legal fee is 1/3 of that number, and 1/3 of that number is $9,000. Okay, so that's the legal fee. So in this example, the legal fee is $10,000. If you choose option 1, the lawyer gets more, and in option 2, the lawyer gets less, and the client also gets more because 27,000 minus 9 is 18,000. So it's a $1,000 difference. Now that looks good, but you would have to have come up with $3,000 in expenses. And like I said, expenses can really run out of control as a case progresses. If it's going to trial, it can be thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars even, in some circumstances. So obviously the bigger the expense, the bigger the difference in these numbers, but I wanted to show this to you because you can choose that option. But again, like I said, I have yet to sign up a case where someone has chosen this option because the expenses that you pay out of pocket will build up, and you pay them as the expenses come up. So I imagine we'd have to keep asking you for money to pay for the expenses. And again, I've never done this, so I don't know really how it plays out, but nobody chooses that option, or I should say no one has chosen that option. It's only been this option. Okay, now the final topic that we're going to cover in this video is about liens. Most people are not familiar with liens, and we have a whole video, a separate video on liens. And I'll just tell you that the liens can be from the medical providers that pay for your medical treatment. For example, if it's Medicare, if you're a Medicare recipient or a Medicaid recipient, and those federal entities have paid for your medical bills, they assert what's called a lien on a case. And they expect, and they will by law, get some money back from what they paid out for your medical care. Now that's not the case if you have a private insurer. If it's not Medicare or Medicaid, it sometimes is not subject to a lien. But again, it depends. You'll hear this term from lawyers a lot, it depends. So when you watch the video on liens, I'll explain it further, but there could be medical liens, there could be workers' compensation liens. So if you're on the job and you get injured, workers' comp covers your bills, typically. There are instances where you can sue outside of the workers' comp world. That's a case we'd be handling. But in those instances, we have to pay back workers' comp some money. That can get very complicated. I'll explain that in the liens video. So let's get back and do some more calculations with pen and paper and show you exactly how liens can also affect the bottom line for you in your settlement. So now let's look and see how a lien will also affect how much you, the client, will take home and how that calculation is, what that looks like. So let's start on a new page. And let's say, we'll use the same example, but now we're going to say we're adding in a lien. Okay. So using the same numbers, we have a $30,000 settlement. We have a $10,000 legal fee. We have $1,000 in disbursements or expenses. And then we have a lien of, we'll say $1,000 for Medicare. We'll assume it's a Medicare lien, that Medicare paid for your medical treatment and we have to pay that back. And again, there's a whole video we have on liens and I'll explain all the different kinds of liens. Here we'll assume it's a Medicare lien and then we'll do the calculation. Before that, let me make one point that I didn't make before. Back to the legal fee. This legal fee, 1/3 of the gross settlement, is a legal fee that comes to my firm, but many of you may have been referred to my firm by another lawyer, whether it was a family friend, some other lawyer you knew, and then that lawyer told you to call me, or that lawyer called me and told me about your case, and then we took the case. So now that lawyer will also get what we call a referral fee. So there could be a referral fee involved, and oftentimes the referral fee is 1/3, or it could be whatever percentage we agree on. So in this case, if we assume, and this, I'm bringing this up because this fact that there's another lawyer involved does not change the bottom line. This fact that there's another lawyer only means that my firm will get less, and we will split this fee. This $10,000 will be split if there's one referring attorney, 2 referring attorneys. Usually it's just one. And we have an arrangement that you will know about. Say if the arrangement is the referring attorney gets 1/3, so the referring attorney here would get $3,334 and we would get, or $33, and we would get $6,667, something like that. So my point is, this fee covers 1, 2, 3, as many lawyers as there are representing you. That's the fee for us to split up. It doesn't affect your bottom line. So that aside, we're back to 30,000 minus 10 is 20, 19, 18. So with a Medicare lien involved in the equation, the client's share goes to 18,000. So the point here is these liens, these disbursements, depending on how much they are, will affect the bottom line. So like I said, we will discuss this with you when we're talking about our recommendations to settle a case and what numbers we think are reasonable. These numbers are going to change what the outcome is for you. So it's obviously part of the discussion when we're discussing potentially settling a case. And again, there's a whole other video on what's my case worth, and we will talk more about it. But for now, this is the lien, this is how it affects the case, and it does affect the bottom line. Okay, so now we've gone over and you understand better how legal fees are calculated, how expenses and disbursements are calculated, and which are the big ticket items in the expense and disbursement categories, and how those also reduce the amount that you take home at the end of the day, along with the legal fees, and liens, what those are in general, and how they also reduce the bottom line for you and your recovery. With those liens, I strongly suggest that you check out that video. If liens are going to be applicable to your case, that lien video will be very helpful to you. So thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Kimmel, managing partner of the firm, and I'll see you in the next video. Consider us your family lawyers for all your legal needs. If we can't help you, we'll find someone who can. We have a large network of lawyers who we know and trust. Don't just call anyone. Contact us at 800-675-8556 or visit our website at www.sskblaw.com.